Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, December 19th, 2024. I'm James Spencer.
I'm Steve Wilkes.
Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week it's the annual disaster show, tales from brewing gone wrong from around the world. Some turned out okay in the end, some not so much. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing, and thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. And many thanks to the new Patreon subscribers who are signing up every week. Your help is very much appreciated. And I also appreciate the help of Mr. Steve Wilkes, who's been with me for, more than 20 years, if we count the DVD thing before the podcast. So thanks, Steve, for joining us again.
Oh, you're welcome.
We hear from people, like I say, all over the world who say, boy, I always look forward to the disaster show. Is it Schadenfreude? Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. People feel better from somebody else's pain.
That's right. Well, to help relieve the pain, I've got a beer to share with you. It's my hoppy Belgian Golden Ale that I made with B45 Gnome from our friends and sponsors at Imperial Yeast. I've got mine off the keg. I bottled yours from the keg. Mm-hmm. Do you have one in front of you?
I've got it. I'm opening it up right now. See?
Oh, that's a good sound. It's always a good sign when I bottle from the keg and it makes a little hiss.
You just don't want it to make an algae hiss.
I used that joke the other day with Scott and Adam, and it got a groan. So
it is groan worthy. It's one of my favorites.
That qualifies for a spot on our disaster show bingo card, but I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
What do you think? Well, I'll give you a second to sip. I like this beer quite a bit. Spoilers.
Oh, that's delicious.
That's
very good.
What's it taste like?
Beer.
Thanks. Thanks, brother-in-law. What's that flavor?
It's familiar. I don't know what it tastes like. It tastes a little bit like it reminds me, honestly, of like if a Frankenschanzer took steroids.
Franziskaner?
Franziskaner, I can't pronounce it. So it's like it reminds me a lot of a German Hefeweizen.
It's got the to me, I get a lot of clove, not so much banana. You can't tape it onto the wall and charge $1 million for it, but I get a lot of clove. I get some of the fruity stuff from the Idaho 7 and the Nectaron that was in the dry hop.
Yeah, it's very fruity. It doesn't have an IPA hop bite.
No.
But it's definitely got a very nice hop presence. Mm-hmm. It's sweeter and less. I don't know what word I want. Less effervescent. So I generally think of a Belgian pale ale as being kind of drinks light. This drink's pretty big.
Yeah.
Now, it's got a lot of mouthfeel. It's nicely carbonated, but it's not like that Pop Rocks kind of carbonation you get sometimes in a.
Well, it is a keg pour, or a keg
there you
fill,
go. Uh-huh.
So it's not bottle conditioned. It finished at 10:08, but it doesn't taste as dry as that to me.
No, it doesn't. It's not a dry. No, it doesn't have a dry. That's good. I couldn't think of the word dry.
And it's got 7.8% alcohol, so there'll be more words that you forget here in just a few minutes.
And it doesn't drink hot. I mean, that's basically an 8% beer, and it doesn't drink like that.
No, it's sneaky. We got the B45 Gnome from Casey at Imperial. She sent you a packet as well.
Yeah,
and I've got to get that to you. I saw you the other day, but I meant to bring it to you. But what would you brew with it to get? What would you? You were maybe maybe I asked you the question the other day, and you were like, I don't know. So maybe you hadn't figured it out yet.
Yeah, I have the same answer. I haven't turned my steel mind to the next brew yet. But actually, what I want to brew with it, even though I don't know exactly what it is yet, is I want to brew something that's like a really nice, refreshing, satisfying spring to early summer beer.
Yeah.
So and I think that the Gnome will really bring out some of those nice fruity, estery things that are nice. So I don't know, maybe about a 1050 to 1060 beer with a nice hop presence, but not challenging.
Yeah.
So put it that way. And just
well,
it's just
Steve, B45 Gnome is known for its versatility for Belgian styles from light and hoppy to dark and malty. So, you got a lot to choose from.
I do.
It's very flocculent. It offers remarkable clarity, classic Belgian flavor profiles. And I think it was perfect choice for this hoppy, strong Belgian Golden. It's limited time, only available for a limited time. So get yours now. Ask your homebrew store for B45 Gnome from our friends and sponsors at Imperial Yeast, and check out all the dependable deliciousness at imperialyeast.com. That's imperialyeast.com. Delicious. That's I really like that a lot.
I'm starting to get some black pepper.
Oh, nice. As it warms up, I'm sure it'll be complexified.
It'll be complexified.
I have a little disaster story. Should we? Oh, wait. We should get through the bingo card first.
Okay.
I will post a link with the description of this episode on basicbrewingradio.com. If you go in the archives, in fact, if you go, in the previous year's disaster shows, if I forget to put it on there, you can find it. It's the same PDF that we've been using since 2017. I'll also post it. I think it's still in the what you call it, the bio on Instagram, and I'll put it on Blueski. I keep wanting to say Blueski, but it's Blue Sky and Threads. But the Disaster Show bingo card is a grid, a 4x4 grid with blank spaces, and there are 20 different items above the spaces that you can write down in the empty spaces, and then regular bingo rules apply. Do you want to read the 20 items? So
Sure.
I can take a sip of beer.
You bet. Item number. This sounds like a top 10 list. Item number 1: angry spouse. Item number 2: blood. Item number 3: beer/wort spray /spray. Sorry. So spilled beer.
Yes. Or spray.
Or spray. Broken glass.
Yes.
Number 5 is foreign beer and object.
Or foreign object and beer.
Or yeah. I was going to go with foreign beer and object.
That'll work too.
Tipsy brewer.
Yes. Speaking of which.
Already. Bad pun from host.
Yeah, that's a guarantee. That should be a free space.
That should be this free space, yeah. Number 8 is award 1. Number 9 is beer dumped.
Yeah, so if it went so wrong that they had to pour it out.
Oh, hate that. Number 10 is late night.
Yeah, so something happens in the middle of the evening, middle of the night.
Leaky keg.
Yeah, that's also a free space, to be frank.
That was 11. 11 and a half is colostomy bag. Which is what happens when you get a leaky bag. Number 12 is fire.
Oh, that's a rare one.
That's a rare one, but it happens. Because people have kind of moved away from the old propane.
That's right.
Not so many people. That's how everybody did it.
Yeah.
Years ago. But I ditched my propane years ago.
Well, I thought I did too. That's part of my story.
There you go. Number 13 is secret repairs.
That's if your spouse or significant other didn't witness the disaster and you got it cleaned up and fixed before he or she did.
Number 14 is obscure host reference.
We've already had that with the Alger hiss, so write that one. Check that off.
Check that off. There'll be more.
Yes.
Number 15, weird ingredient.
Weird, wacky ingredient.
Number 16 is brewing upgrade.
Yes.
Explain that. Is that like
brewing upgrade? That's if you break your stuff so bad you get to buy new ones.
Yes. Number 17, stuck sparge.
Stuck sparge with the brew in a bag. That happens less nowadays.
Less often. Number 18, bottle bomb.
Bottle bomb. Any Spike Jones fans out there? That's another obscure reference.
Ah.
Bottle bomb.
Is that like bottle bomb or like
it's beetle bomb?
Beetle bomb. Okay.
It's the horse race one from Spike Jones.
Yeah, okay. For some reason, I was thinking like Tannenbaum, like Baum.
No, that's the old. What is that movie? Number 19.
Like helpful spouse.
To go against the angry spouse, which is number 1.
Mm-hmm. And then number 20 is ruined floor or furniture.
Yes. We could add ceiling in there as well. Ruined piece of furniture or house. A wall. You could put a wall in there too. I'm going to suggest a couple of others. Smell of beer. The smell of beer and foreshadowing.
Oh yeah, foreshadowing. And
I've got a new sound effect for foreshadowing. It's the sound of a big bell, and I labeled it bong. Let's see if I can. Oh no, wait, that's something else. That's take Steve back to his college days. No, that's another kind of bong. This is a bong I was thinking of.
That's high school.
So, there we go. So if we hear this, that's foreshadowing. So, okay. And we also have, of course, the old standby for under pressure. And then I've got a new one that we heard last show, and it's the Wilhelm scream.
So, I feel good.
Okay, we're like 30 minutes in. Let's start to read some
let's read some stuff.
Should I save my story, my disaster story, for later, or should I tell it now?
Or blend it in seamlessly along the way.
Yeah, I'll be doing that. That's good. It's enough of hearing from us. Let's hear from Matthew, listener Matthew, who wrote this back in February on Valentine's Day of this year. Sent it in. Funny story, Matthew says. I had a dark fruit melomel fermenter blow off the airlock last night during fermentation. Blueberry bits everywhere. I spent the early hours this AM cleaning up walls, floor, and ceiling, then rushed to a full morning of Zoom meetings. When I came downstairs for lunch, my wife asked what was on my forehead, which I then went to the mirror to see a pretty substantial blueberry smudge down the center of my forehead. No. Yes, I'd gone to all the Zoom calls and nobody said a darn thing. Then I realized it was Ash Wednesday. Blueberry Wednesday.
That's fortuitous.
So my work colleagues mistook my blueberry explosion on my forehead for my observance of Ash Wednesday. That's pretty good. I like that.
That's actually that's not bad.
Short. That's maybe the shortest one and pretty darn funny. That's a good way to start off. Okay. This is Will from Stockholm, Sweden, who's a repeat offender. Will has submitted at least twice before. So, says, Dear Steve and James, it's the end of the year, which means it's time for me to finish my Christmas shopping, write my Christmas cards, finalize travel plans back home to Mom's in New Jersey, and update you two on my most recent brewing disaster. As disasters go, this was not as horrible as years past, but as my brewing accomplices said, they didn't say that. As my brewing accomplices said, I needed to pay my dues to the goddess Ninkasi with a tasty sacrifice again this year. So here's my report of the incident. It all started with a completely normal brew day. My friend Victor and I brewed up a Dunkelweiss. We followed the tips on Brew Your Own, and all seemed in order when we filled up the Firmzilla fermenter with 55 liters of wort, 2 liters shy of the max limit line. Foreshadowing. We pitched the yeast, Lallemand Munich Classic, carried the fermenter to the basement, and congratulated ourselves to a job well done. Since there was not a lot of headspace, maybe 5 liters, we decided to be careful and connect a blow-off tube to the fermenter leading to a small bucket just in case. Mistake number 1. Every time I go into my basement, I'm a little scared of what could potentially happen, i.e. disaster 2021 and 2022. On Sunday morning, all was fine, but on Monday morning, my nose was greeted with the smell of stale beer. So that's number, what is that, number 2021? The smell of stale beer. Upon opening the basement floor, I hurried down the stairs to see a pile of fresh yeast outside of the blow-off bucket. Mistake number 2, we used a 1/4 inch or 6 millimeter tubing for the blow-off tube. On this occasion, the internal diameter was big enough, thank God, for the Kreuzen yeast to escape, but just barely. Apparently, so much pressure had built up when pushing the yeast out of the fermenter that bursts of the yeast from the tube had blown the tube out of the bucket. Okay, no problem. I will clean up a little yeast. After cleaning up the mess, I decided to give the fermenter a little squeeze to see if it was holding pressure despite the blow-off tube. Oh, he was accidentally brewing under pressure. Oh my God, it was rock hard. The fermenter was a bomb waiting to explode, which needed to be diffused immediately. I dropped everything and devoted the next hour to creating a better blow-off system. I connected the only other tubing I had, a 3/8" tube, or 10 millimeters, to our fermenting bucket to the Firmzilla fermenter, and was relieved to hear the pressure immediately decrease as a liter of yeast poured into the blow-off bucket. This was much better, but these Firmzilla pressure systems use a ball lock disconnect. Thus, there was still too much pressure in the fermenter. Thankfully, the blow-off system worked, but to my surprise, Ninkasi was not satisfied. She had been denied 55 liters of beer and was determined to receive her share. Over the next day, I watched as 6 liters of Kreuzen, my beer, left my fermenter for the blow-off bucket. My buddy Victor laughed at how thirsty our goddess was being. I was, and am happy to make the sacrifice of 6 liters of beer in the blow-off bucket as opposed to the potential 55 liters all over my basement floor, which does not have a drain. Potential future disaster. Word of warning for all future Weiss and Dunkelweiss brewers. Lallemand Munich Classic is notorious for producing huge Kreuzens. I read in forums after my experience that you should leave 30% of the fermenter empty if you choose to use this yeast to give room for the Kreuzen. And
wow.
Will says, Will from Stockholm says, once again, thanks for all the homebrewing advice you provide. I'm really enjoying the Mash Your Luck shows and would love to see Steve go once more into the fray and try his luck again. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. So I had a bucket. I did a 100% wheat IPA, I think, was it with Whiteout, Imperial Whiteout, and it blew the lid off my fermentation bucket. I mean, literally, and I don't know how that didn't wake us up in the middle of the night. That was one of my brewing disasters this year. Walter from Massachusetts says, thinking back over the past year, I'm happy to say that I didn't have any catastrophic failures. Not that every brew day went perfectly, just that I was never in danger of losing any limbs or going to the ER. Well, that's good.
Yeah. That's a pretty low bar, though.
No equipment broken or was damaged. The worst thing that happened was wheat wine brew day that went sideways at the end. The brew started out fine, loading the 20 pounds of wheat and Pilsner malt into the brew bag. I used a pulley to lift the bag at the end of the mash. I was slightly concerned that the hook holding the pulley might pull out rather of the rafter above, because I had not tried to lift that much wet grains before. Fortunately, my calculations were correct and it held. This is where things that I would do differently start. My mash boil kettle is 15 gallons, but I only collected like 5 gallons of first runnings. I needed more to get a full 5 gallons of wort at around 1.1 specific gravity. So I put the bag of grains in another pot and batch sparged them until I had around 9 gallons of 1060 wort. I proceeded to boil this down. After 2+ hours, I was just above 1080. I didn't want to babysit this for another 2 hours, brewing outside in the winter, and the sun had long ago set, so we're sneaking up on late night brewing here. So I increased the wattage to my electric ripple heating element. Fred Sanford used to sell those, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Electric ripple heating elements.
Yeah. Vermont rebuilt them.
I increased the wattage to 3,500 watts. I came back a half hour later and immediately detected the smell of scorched sugar. Mm-hmm. I shut it down and should have dumped it then, but I held out hope that maybe the scorched flavor wasn't that bad, or maybe it would fade during fermentation. Walter says the acrid scent and flavor did not go away. The fermented beer was undrinkable. I still didn't want to give up on the brew. So I put some into my air still. The smoke/burnt sugar flavor still remained. Maybe if I liked scotch, I could have used it in mixed drinks. The scorched flavor was too much. I just used it to light my charcoal. That's some high test stuff.
That's high test. Yeah. You could run a Pinto on those too. A Ford Pinto.
Just don't hit something. Just don't back into anything.
I ran out of gas one time on a deer hunting trip in my Ford Pinto, and all I had was a gallon of Coleman lighter fluid. So I put that in. Got me to the gas station, and I mean, that car never ran better.
It's like a nitro.
Hey, 72 Pinto, man. That thing will burn candle wax.
Oh, so poor Walter didn't work out.
Now, I think that it's not technically fire, though it's scorched.
Oh, that's right.
Do we have a beer dumped?
Well, there is number 9 is beer dumped, although he
never really made it to beer.
He did use it. Well, it went past beer to went past beer to
he
distilled stuff.
Yeah, so it doesn't really. He didn't end up with a beer that he dumped. He distilled it, and so he ended up with a moonshine that he dumped.
Yeah, with lighter fluid.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to count that one.
Okay. All right. If you're playing at home, you can do what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I'm doing it.
John from Santa Rosa, California says, hello. Hi, John. This is my disaster. I've been brewing for 34 years. That's
your first problem.
Man, when to quit.
Yeah. You couldn't get a healthy hobby like bowling.
There's a lot of beer in bowling, too.
Well, yeah, I guess that's
back in 2016, I started teaching homebrewing classes at a few local homebrew shops and at our local community college. One of the classes at the college was a 3-Saturday class aimed at brewery employees that included an intro to brewing, beer history, and serving beer paired with food or cheese. I used number 4 below to heat taint beer for a demonstration. Boy, there's nothing I hate worse than a heat taint.
I'm telling you.
So John, he attached a graphic, and I'm not going to say where it's from. He didn't want me to tell where it's from, but it's a beer and food course. And it's under demonstration. It has several things that you can do. Number 4 is set aside half the cans of beer in the refrigerator, boil the rest unopened for 20 minutes in an uncovered pot of boiling water. Make sure water covers the cans.
That just sounds... Yeah.
Hello. Following the instructions carefully, John says, I started the boiling process. About 10 minutes into the boil, all of a sudden there was a loud kawank sound. He's been reading Don Martin of Mad Magazine. The bottom of the can that is usually intended was now sticking out, or indented, was now sticking out. A couple of minutes later, another kawank sound. Yes, the same thing had happened to the second can. That beer sure must have been under pressure. Not to be detoured, I kept going. Couple of minutes more, yes, kawank. The pop-top end this time had puffed out positive. Luckily, I had left the room to reread those instructions when the end of the can finally came completely off, sending the can, its boiling hot contents, and boiling water from the pot all over the kitchen. It was everywhere, ceiling, floors, counters, and cabinets. I'll have to give my wife credit. She jumped right in to help clean up the huge mess with no feedback on my stupidity. Helpful spouse. That's number number 19.
Although she really was helpful. I always interpret that as helpful, sarcastically spouse. Like, yes, dear, I know I need to turn the heat on.
Your experience may vary. He said, James, I believe this procedure was taken out of later releases of this course, and maybe you shouldn't call them out by name. By the way, this is a great course. Thanks for all you do. Faithful follower of your podcast. Thanks, John, from Santa Rosa, California. Wow. I bet that was an interesting sound. Kawank.
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 And did that qualify as a bottle bomb?
Oh, yeah. In the modern parlance, yeah.
I think it does.
That's a can bomb, bottle/can bomb. Yeah, good call. Are you close to your bingo yet?
No. I'm only 2 in.
Oh, wow. Dan in Florida writes, I've been brewing for over 12 years and was happy to start kegging years ago to stop messing with the bottles. But since I share most of my beers, bottles weren't completely out of the picture. But I still hate cleaning them. Brewing already makes me a dishwasher. That's what I say. If you love washing dishes, you'll love home brewing. And when I found a small canning system that I can power with my electric drill, I jumped for it. I use it whenever I want to share, but up until recently, I just fill the cans directly from a tap so the beer is carbonated already. But I have also been curious about can conditioning. I recently brewed one of my favorite double IPA recipes, and ended up with enough extra beer to fill 4 cans. So I was excited to attempt my first can conditioning. I added 1 spoon of dextrose to each can. Doesn't say what size of spoon.
Well, there you go.
I filled each to the top with beer and gently shook enough to mix the sugar. At room temperature in my brewery/shop, thank goodness, foreshadowing, he says, the next day, I gently squeezed the cans to determine if it was trying to carbonate, and each can was already hard as a diamond. Boy, those were the days. Not good that soon. Dan says, cautiously, the next day I walked to the 4-pack and touched one of the lids, and it exploded in an atomized gusher of misty heaven. That I used to call beer until I was wearing it.
Oh, my.
Woo, that could have come out a lot worse. The pulled tab popped just enough to allow the 10,000 PSI to fully mist in the air in about 1.2 seconds. I anxiously stared the other 3 bombs down and decided to submerge them one at a time underwater in the shop sink where I would open the individual cans there. After removing the threat to myself and the brewery, my clothes went straight into the washing machine, and so did I. Oh, he went into the washing machine. I need some research and better advice for future efforts to can condition. I'm only thankful my confidence didn't compel me to try an entire batch. Yeah, thank goodness for that. 2 cases of beer instead of 4 cans. Happy brewing from Dan in Florida.
Yeah, and also shout out to Misty Heaven. She's opening tomorrow night at the Folly.
Get your dollar bills ready.
Get your dollar bills ready. Because she's... Which one is she? Under pressure.
Oh! Okay.
There you go.
All right. Carbonation drops, or are those little carb tabs, whatever, the little pills I suggest to Dan, rather than just a spoonful of sugar. It may help the medicine go down, but it also it blows up your cans. And I'm gonna mispronounce a lot of things in this show. And the first one is probably Niall from snowy Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Niall says, I have many brewing mistakes. In fact, if I get to the end of the boil without a spill or some other issue, I start to feel anxious about why things are going so well. Probably my best story is the time I hooked up the blow-off tube to the liquid post of my fermenter rather than the gas post. Fermentation kicked in overnight, and I came down to 2/3 of my wort all over the floor. Thank God my wife slept in that morning, or my brewing equipment would have ended up on the Facebook Marketplace. Okay, so here we go. We got number 3, spilled wort / spill spray. And then, what is it? There's one, secret repairs. Does that qualify for secret repairs?
Well,
the wife didn't know.
Tell me again what he did.
He spilt 2/3 of his beer on the floor, and his wife was sleeping in.
Well, that's a secret cleanup.
Oh, well, okay.
It's not really a secret repair.
Wow, you're a stickler.
I'm strict. I'm a stickler.
You're from Strickler.
I'm from Strickler.
That's out by us. Niall says, I've enjoyed your podcast for years, and in fact, I went back to the beginning and listened again while driving home to Nova Scotia for Christmas, about 910 miles in 2021, in summer of 2022, and the theme song marked my progress. Every new episode, the theme music briefly brings me back to heading home to see my family and friends. Aww.
Oh, that's very sweet.
I hope you, Steve, and your families have a wonderful Christmas. Wasn't that nice?
Yeah.
Getting a little verklempt. Do you have a? Oh no, we should wait to share your brewing disaster until we drink your beer.
Oh yeah.
But as I finish off my Belgian Golden, do you want to hear? Should I seamlessly work that into the flow now?
Do it in an artful manner.
Back in the day, that's Garrison Keillor. Like woebegone, was brewing beer one day, and old Ethel from across the street. And then I can harass some people. All right, so I've had this Warthog brewing system for like nigh on, a decade.
Yeah.
And everything's been going great with it. The other day I went to brew this beer, and I plugged in. You have to plug in the control system to the temperature probe in the kettle. There's one of two. Mm-hmm. And so I plugged it in, and the numbers went kind of wacky. And I was like, oh, it's never done that before. So I kind of wiggled the cable, and it fixed it. So it's never a good sign.
If you wiggle your cable more than 3 times, you're playing with it.
That's right. Don't do that in public. So I got through the mash okay. But then when it came time to the boil, everything I couldn't get it to work, and so I figured out that, and this is my fault because like years ago, the end of the cable has this little bracket that like secures it, the cable itself to the connector, and that little bracket came off. Like, I don't know, it's been a couple of years, and I was like, it still works, it'll be fine. Well, no, that's poor maintenance on my part. So the cable broke. And so the way the system is set up, the heating element won't come on unless it senses the temperature probe, or at least I can't figure out how to. I could have called Dave, and he probably would have walked me through it, but I was in a hurry. So I went down to the basement, and I got my old propane burner. Thank goodness I never get rid of any brewing equipment is a lesson here, folks. But I got my old propane burner, and Susan and I put on, heat-proof gloves, and she helped me bring my kettle because the Warthog system is essentially an electrified Cajun cooker. So it's still a kettle. So I took the kettle we took the kettle over to the propane burner, and I boiled there. So everything turned out all right. I was supposed to do a controlled temperature hop stand at 180 degrees at the end of that. Well, I had no accurate way to do that. So I skipped the the hop stand hops and just added those into the dry hop. So as designed, this Belgian Golden probably would have been a little more bitter and had a little more hop presence, but I think it's delightful the way it is. So.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, I couldn't. Yeah, I mean, you might be right about that, but I don't know that it would be better. It would just be different.
Yeah, it's dang tasty.
Mm-hmm.
So should we open one of yours?
Sure.
What you get?
Let's open the AB.
AB.
The accidental braggot.
Aha! It's a theme.
It is.
And you shared this. Now, fans of the video episode.
Yeah, I was going to say we've already done a show on this, but this was definitely a disaster-worthy beer. Or
That's beautiful. It's crystal clear. It's way effervescent. It has a nice
it's
white foamy head on it.
Mm-hmm.
Cheers, by the way. Are you okay?
No, I just hit my head.
Oh, you hit the metal plate.
That's right. Wow, that's really good.
Oh man. Oh, that's tasty. What's the ABV on that? Do you remember?
It's north of 10. I can't remember. So I've kind of lost a few of the details, but it's well north of 10.
My mispronunciations are going to go up for me. I'm going to have trouble mispronouncing a, an, and the.
Yeah, no kidding. So just as a quick bullet point version of this, because we did do a full video on it, but I brewed this with the idea that it was going to be about a 6 or 7% summer honey beer, not braggoty, but just, a nice light pale ale.
But it turned out to be a honey boo-boo.
It was a honey boo-boo, that's right. And, oh boy. And anyway, but I had fermentation issues, and I ended up using 3 different yeasts. Yeah. So I used a beer yeast. I used an imperial yeast, which was my fault that it didn't work because it was old. And it was well past the date, but I thought, this stuff always works. Well, sometimes it doesn't always work, but that's not their fault. It was just an old packet.
Pilot error.
Yeah, pilot error. And then I didn't even let it go 2 full days. It just wasn't doing anything. So then I pitched a packet of wheat yeast, the Safale. Oh, what's the WBO6?
Mm.
And then it took off, and I mean, it went nuts for about a day, and then nothing. And I knew it hadn't fermented out. I knew that what had to have happened was the WBO6 kind of ate the easy sugars, and there was still a bunch left. So then I wasn't sure what to do. So then I went back and I added 3 more pounds of honey.
That's it. If you're having a problem fermentation, add more fermentables.
Add more fermentables, especially ones that are hard to ferment. So I made a thick must, which is also one of my porn names, and so I made this thick must and I put it in, and then I pitched a packet of 71B wine yeast, and then it really did go to town, and that's what we're drinking now. So a beer that started out supposed to have been 6%, somewhere in that area, 5-6%, ended up as I want to say it's about 11%. I just can't remember, but
that's way good.
It's way good, and the lesson here is just don't give up, unless of course you scorched it.
Yeah, and then you could
I've done that too.
You could use it as lighter fluid.
Yeah, I got some scorched hummus in the freezer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Well, kind of the same thing. My wife, I put some.
Is that a Bochet? Is a Bochet hummus?
It's a Bochet chickpea, and Gretchen scorched the peas. She scorched the chickpeas,
you don't cook hummus, do you?
Well, you cook the chickpeas if you're going to make hummus from scratch.
Oh, so you got like raw chickpeas.
Yeah, that's how
I use the canned ones.
Nah,
it takes me like 10 minutes to make hummus.
Well, I just have to plan a little bit. But at any rate, so I planned and I put the chickpeas on, then went somewhere, went to the store or something, and she didn't look at it, and so the chickpeas, they burned. But we made hummus. We went ahead and made the hummus, and it was actually okay. But that scorch flavor.
No, that's hard to.
Yeah, so I put it I froze it because we'll eat it. Yeah, it's a year old. Yeah, so it's reached that point where you put stuff in the refrigerator or the freezer until you feel not guilty about throwing it away.
Yeah, that happened with us with wedding cake.
Mm-hmm.
We had it for 30 years.
Woo!
I literally had to use a hammer and a screwdriver to chip away the frost in our antique no frost upright freezer. I chiseled the cake out of the thing, and it was in like a Tupperware kind of thing. But it looked great.
Did you eat any of it?
Yes. It
was
a little dry.
Just kind of like a.
But I lived.
Yeah. Well.
So far. Okay.
All right. Well, so what do you think? So you like this?
I love it. I think it's even better.
Really
I think it's even better than when we had it on the show, and it was good on the show.
I do too. It's really changed. It's mellowed out.
It's getting champagne-y.
It's getting champagne-y, and the honey flavor is coming back. It's becoming more honey rather than malt.
It reminds me, and we talk about this often probably, but our first sparkling meads that we made back in the day. So, and speaking of weddings, with that, those batches that we made for our friends Kyle and Laura, their wedding, it reminds me a lot of this. This has a teeny more body from the malt probably. But,
it's Pilsner malt.
Yeah, it's real good.
Nice.
I feel all warm now. Okay.
I do too.
Oh no.
I'm ready for a pizza.
Giuliano from Ireland. Now, and I hope there's not a trick pronunciation, Giuliano. Giuliano lives in the County Cork, which, according to Susan's research, is where my Irish roots are from. And Giuliano is the one who emails me when I forget to hit the button to post on Spotify. So, so cheers. Special thanks.
You want to stay off of the river butt if you're in the County Cork.
Oh, yeah? Really?
You got a cork up your butt.
Oh, God. Jeez Louise. Okay.
And that's, what that leads to?
Being under pressure.
Yeah, that's right.
God. We've lost Ireland now. I told you, this is not, we're 43 minutes in. I can't tell.
Keep going.
Well, I can't. I told you about my fictitious, my fake name. My grandmother's maiden name was McCarty, and we got to know a couple of people from Ireland a couple summers ago, and I said, I've got Irish roots. My grandmother's maiden name is McCarty, and the lady that we were eating lunch with, she said, "Oh, that's a fake name." So, so it turns out that my third great grandfather, who immigrated from County Cork, he was born Owen McCarthy, and lost an H in the translation. So there you go. Fake Irish name. My fake Irish name. Okay. Giuliano, remember him? Perhaps it's too late already, but here are a couple of things that happened with me a while back that may give the audience some giggles. First one, shorts and brewing sometimes do not go together. Middle of the summer, I was preparing a standard West Coast IPA, prepped everything. Mashing went well, so did the boil. I started preparing everything for cooling down with my Grainfather counterflow chiller. Connected the chiller to the pump, started the recirculation to sanitize things, and left going for 5 minutes. I touched the chiller, and it was boiling hot. Suddenly, I realized that the quick connect I used for cold water was not connected at all. Not thinking, Not thinking clearly, I went to remediate the situation and clicked it on. Water started rushing through the counterflow, and I heard an almighty whoosh, followed by the counterflow hot water outtake pipe becoming alive and whipping my shin with high-pressure steam. Ah!
Wow.
Needless to say... Oh, wait. There we go.
That's right.
Needless to say that I was wearing trousers, pants. Thanks. Thanks, Giuliano. we say pants, and over there that means underwear. Okay. Needless to say that I was wearing trousers. Oh, that if I was wearing trousers, that would not have been a disaster story. For those unlucky enough to be on the wrong side of a jet of steam, the skin was pretty much gone. Thankfully, I applied hydrogel fast and second skin, so no need to pop into the hospital, but oh boy, that hurt. Bingo mark for blood. So blood is number 2. Beer was okay, but not worth the scab. Oof. Trigger warning, sorry. Fast forward a few months and brewing a Courage 1964 Imperial Stout from Shut Up About Barley Perkins for a barrel fill with 3 other brewers. We used our 20-gallon mash tun, as the grain bill is ridiculous 70 pounds, roughly 50 pounds of ale malt, 12 pounds of brown malt, and 7 pounds of black malt that ended up with an OG of 1,100. Wow. We used the large mash tun and then collected the wort and used a couple of grain fathers to do the boil and finish the beer. As homebrewers, we're never satisfied with enough punishment. We also went ahead and did a party guile, sort of, with the second runs that made a small, quote-unquote, 9.5% beer after some sugar was added. Well, anyway, there we were, about probably 5 hours of nonstop work without drinking. And we did the viscous first running of the Imperial wort. All well and in the grain fathers for the boil. With that set, we turn our attention to the party guile. To be as efficient as possible, we had prepared the water additions so we would not need to be messing with measuring things, etc. So off it went to the first 20 liters from a plastic drum or jerry can. All went well. Where went the second? Did I mention that it was getting dark by then? Late night brewing. And we did not have the lights on. Anyway, there we plowed ahead and rinsed the grains, extracting a lovely 1075 OG wort. Meanwhile, the grain fathers were busy boiling. We were getting ready to start cooling and packaging the wort to be fermented. I asked around for the other brewer to pass me the plastic drum with the sanitizer so we can sanitize the other drum. To that he replies, "Which one? There's only water here." Yep, we added 25 liters of prepped Star San to the Party Guile beer.
Oh, boy.
What to do, says Giuliano. We went ahead, boiled the beer, and hoped for the best. God. We need another one for persistent brewer.
God love him. I know.
Just head right on. What the hell? We're in this far.
Yeah, that's how. Yeah, it's like, well, what are you going to do?
We, as it was half diluted, 1 part of prepped Star San and 1 part of water, we reverted to one episode of Basic Brewing Radio, where you discussed the acceptable limits of Star San to be consumed and decided on boiling and fermenting just to see what happened. We drunk it all at the end. The malt bill was so dense and strong that the added Star San did not impact the flavor. Bingo mark for foreign object in beer. I would say that qualifies. Foreign substance in beer, at least.
Yeah.
Have a happy holidays and more episodes in 2025.
Wow.
Boy.
Well, Star San's not supposed to hurt you.
Well, in theory.
I mean,
Please consult. Legal disclaimer, please consult manufacturer's instructions.
Exactly.
Charlie Talley, the inventor of Star San, says that it is a yeast nutrient. So don't worry, don't fear the foam because, if you get some foam in your beer, it'll help the yeast. But I don't know that he would endorse putting, like a whole batch of diluted star sand. But who am I? This is Roger who gave his full address. Wow. Okay. Oh, by the way, we're not going to send out a physical thing this year because last time I sent out physical things all over the world, it nearly broke me. So turns out postage is pretty expensive when you're sending stuff to Europe and Australia and stuff. And plus, then it was like the pandemic, and Australia was like closed, and I couldn't send anything for there for a while. It's just like, ugh. So, Steve, you and I have to we have to come up with something electronically deliverable that we can send to everybody, and we'll get together on that.
The courts have told me to quit sending things, images, or so I can't go down that road.
Scan emails from Steve with a
that's right,
with a virus program. Okay, this is Roger from Queensland, Australia. Here's one for the Near Disaster Show. About 10 years ago, after 25 years, 25, so he's been brewing for 25 years. I can do math still. I need another sip. About 10 years ago, after 25 years of kit and kilo beer making, I made the move to all grain brewing. My setup was very much a homemade 3-vessel system, and the beers were good. But in much the same way that I dreamt one day of owning a Porsche 911, I brought my expectations back down to earth and hankered after a Brewmeister 1-vessel system. German equals good, yeah? Then one came up secondhand in Brisbane, about 2-hour drive away. It was a BM Brewmeister, a BM50. Boy,
those were the days. Now it's just a dribble late at night.
Jesus Christ. Okay. It was a BM50 at a good price. How's your day? Hi, it's great. We got a BM50. At a good price, as the owner was relocated to New Zealand. Anyway, after thinking about it for, I don't know, probably a split second, I put my hand and said, yes, please. On the day I got back home with it, I lined up all the bits and bobs on the bench in the brew shed. Damn, man, I wish I could hear.
Wow, that is some powerful alliteration.
I wish I could hear Roger saying bits and bobs on the bench in the brew shed. I would.
I do too.
I want to attempt it, but I would offend everybody. We would lose that continent. Admiring all this newly acquired bling. Oh, it's another B. In an all-new condition, it was truly a thing of beauty. Then as I turned around to get a celebratory beer from the fridge, my shirt sleeve caught on one of the lifting lugs of the bigger malt pipe, and down it went, landing top edge down on the concrete floor. As one does after a mishap like this, you rush over and pick it up, hoping in vain the damage will miraculously repair itself. You know, like the 5-second rule when you drop a food item on the floor. But no, the damage was done. The nicely rounded top rim was deformed, and the circular malt pipe was no longer circular, which it needs to be to allow the internal perforated plates and screens to fit snugly. Luckily, a friend of mine has a well-equipped workshop with lathes, metal bending gear, hydraulic presses, all manner of welding equipment, and so much more. Wow. So we went to work on it using the old crash repair philosophy back when cars were made out of metal that said if a bit of tin was bent out of shape, you should be able to bend it back into shape. Well, it worked, and probably somewhat easier than bending a 911 back into shape after a mishap. So, says Roger, came the first brew day with it, and I'd already installed an electric winch on the ceiling to lift the heavy malt pipe out of the wort. I might have once been able to lift the malt pipe with 12 kilos of fully saturated grain without assistance, but not now. Boy, welcome to my world. Work smarter, not harder is my senior age mantra. Anyway, mash done, I lowered the winch hook down, connected it to the bracket on the malt pipe, and pressed the up button on the winch controller. Well, the slack took up, the winch groaned. I thought I heard the ceiling creak, and the whole Braumeister with laden malt pipe and 50 liters of wort was hoisted off the bench top, all relying on the hold down rod remaining attached to the base of the BM itself. Quickly realizing my error in not first undoing the nut, securing the hold down bar to the top of the rod, I hit the down button, and the whole lot crashed down to the workbench with a fair amount of splashing of hot wort. The happy ending is that it was uneventful after that, and the beer turned out great. So lesson learned, and I'm grateful to the Braumeister folk for making this nice bit of kit as solid as it is. So
Boy.
Thanks, Roger. And beer / wort spill / spray, I'd say.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, I already had it, though.
And is that it? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see anything else in there.
Yeah, it's not exactly a brewing upgrade if you just repair what you already had.
Does it ever strike you that on, I don't know what the percentage is, but most of the brewing disasters, the end of the story is the beer turned out great.
In fact,
it happens all the time. I mean, it happens to me. It happens, it's like, well, I had this, I had that. And it's a disaster because it's a big freaking mess. But then it's like, oh, well, the beer was great.
Well, we should add that as a thing, because we got beer dumped. Mm-hmm. Well, we got award won. That's on the positive side. But yeah, good point. So just persist. Tony from South Carolina. I was getting caught up on the podcast on my morning walk yesterday, and you mentioned you were taking submissions for the annual disaster show. My first thought was how lucky I'd been so far this year.
Foreshadowing.
There were some mishaps, but nothing on the level of being a disaster. My second thought should have been of Icarus flying too close to the sun. Don't want to melt those wings. My family and I made plans to travel out of town for the Thanksgiving holiday. Regrettably, we came down with an illness the day before we were supposed to leave. I'm sorry to hear that. We didn't want it to be a caravan of typhoid Marys, especially given my extended family's recent medical history, so we canceled at the last minute. Oh, that's good. Prudent? Mm-hmm. Okay. Speaking of which, in my brain fog state, I decided to at least get some beer work done over the break, and put a freshly kegged Saison in the Kegerator under gas. My Kegerator is a converted chest freezer that has a max capacity for 5 corny kegs. Ooh. However, I usually only have 3 to 4 kegs on at a time, with the rest of the freezer being full of miscellaneous food, fermentation projects, canned seltzer waters, and this time of year, Alton Brown's aged homemade eggnog. Wow. Where do you live in South Carolina, Tony?
Yeah.
Between that and the rat's nest of tubes, it gets to be a bit of a chore to connect and disconnect kegs. Regardless, I was able to remove a freshly kicked keg of Fest beer. Wow, it gets better. And get my Saison under gas alongside a pumpkin Saison and a very tasty Vienna lager. Now, Tony's just bragging at this point.
Yeah, this is just abusing his station in life.
Immediately,
I'm not. I have been thinking about visiting South Carolina.
Well, we'll figure out.
Now I have more reason to.
That's right. Immediately after, I crashed on the couch where I stayed most of the rest of the day. In the evening, I went to grab a seltzer water from the Kegerator. I opened the lid to find my seltzer water, along with about 4 inches of beer on the bottom of the freezer that started freezing to the walls of the Kegerator. My guess is I had an bad O-ring on the outpost or a faulty disconnect. So that's, again, spilled beer. Mm-hmm. I was distraught, but the beer wasn't going to remove itself, so I grabbed our carpet cleaning machine. It has a tube on it that I've used in the past for getting small spills out of the bottom of the freezer, so this seemed like the best tool for the job. However, apparently the beer still had some carbonation, and the machine filled up with foam within just a few seconds, shutting off the machine and sending beer foam all over my garage floor. At least I had good head retention. All in all, the only casualty was about 2.5 gallons of beer and no long-term damage other than my ego. After the ice defrosted the next day, I used the opportunity to do a deep clean of the kegerator and clean taps and tap lines so it wasn't a total waste. This is not at all how I thought our Thanksgiving would go, but as we like to say in my family, it could always be worse. Be careful. Be careful when you say it. Thanks for the many years of great content, I believe. I've listened to every episode so far. Wow, thanks, Tony. Found your podcast in 2014, and after digging in the archives, have been here ever since. Wow,
we were 10 years old.
That's right. It's a decade. Well, the podcast was 10 years old.
Well, yeah.
You, Steve, Matt, Adam, Chris, Scott, Sean, Josh, and your other rotating contributors, all very much appreciated and worth the price of admission, which, to be fair, is free, but feel free to use this opportunity to remind your listeners about patreon.com/basicbrewing, which I'm proud to say that I am part of. Wow. Thanks, Tony.
Yeah.
How nice.
Like you always say, free and worth every penny.
Says it's his second entry into the disaster show. Says, I was the idiot that ended up with cranberry beer on the ceiling circa 2018.
Wow.
I like to say you're not a home brewer unless you've mopped the ceiling.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Ooh, I'm going to take another sip.
I had peaches all over the ceiling one time. She did not like it.
Family show.
Well, I didn't tell you how she was all over the ceiling.
Okay, this is, and again, forgive me, Bas, B-A-S, from Nijmegen in the Netherlands, I'm going to say. Probably not. What would you say, Bas? It's not Bass.
I don't know.
Bas?
Yeah,
Bas.
I don't know.
I'm going to say Bas. Forgive me. It's I've always lived in Arkansas. Okay. Hi, James and Steve. I want to start by saying how much I enjoy Basic Brewing. It's been a fantastic resource for improving my brewing skills, and I always look forward to your episodes. Well, thank you very much. The annual disaster show is a favorite of mine. Hearing everyone's brewing misadventures reminds me that even in disaster, there's always a good story and maybe a decent beer to be had. I thought I'd share my own tale of brewing woe this year, a series of mishaps aptly named Bad Things Come in Triple. or if you're a certain brewery here in town, Tripel.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay. Boss says, here's the story. I usually use the hand crank for my 2-roller malt bill since I like to make small experimental batches. However, this time I was brewing a large batch using about 9 kilograms of malt. So I decided to use a power drill to save time and my wrists. Most of my power tools are hand-me-downs of industrial quality because my father used to own a factory. Ooh. Now, I'm not the most skilled man with the power drill and have destroyed many drill bits and screws, mostly to the amusement of my father, who likes to point out the irony that I'm a dentist who is useless with a drill. Son, be a dentist. Name that movie. Little Shop of Horrors. Okay. Steve Martin. It all started out well. The first kilograms went smoothly, but still took a fairly long time, so I decided to up the drill's tempo. And boy, the drill roared with power, and the malt flowed through the mill at high speed. Drunk with power, I sped up the drill even more. I believe it was around the time... I believe it was...
the gong.
Well, here we go. I believe it was around that time, one of the balls from the ball bearing hit my forehead. I've been brewing a long time, but I've never had balls hit my forehead during a brew.
Oh, yeah, that's rough. That's rough. That's the best I've heard yet in all the years. When you got ball bearings flying out and hitting you in the head, you've got a problem.
It was around that time one of the balls from the ball bearings hit my forehead that I remembered the industrial quality of the drill. Luckily, most of the malt was crushed, and I still had my eyesight. Woo, thank goodness for that. So I decided to continue my brew day. I mashed the grains in my brew-in-a-basket system, and everything went fine. When it was time to remove the basket full of grains from the kettle, my luck turned again. The weight of the wet grains was too much for the basket, and the handle snapped off.
Oh, geez.
This resulted in the basket plummeting back into the kettle. Hot wort splashed everywhere, burning my skin. So, oh, gosh. So here we got number 3, the spilled stuff. We should have, well, is that blood? I don't know if there's any blood yet. When I removed the basket again, I saw that the bottom had broken, resulting in half of my grains being in the kettle. I pumped out the wort into my fermenter, scooped out the grains, and poured my wort back into the kettle. Now that the beer was saved, it was time to tend to my burns. The rest of my brew day went fine. And I put the fermenter in the. See, normal people would be like, I'm done. I'm hurt. I'm gonna go lie down.
Yeah. Not brewers.
No. Fermentation went smoothly, and the aroma coming off was floral, spicy, and fruity. The night before bottling, I decided to lower the temperature to cold crash the beer. I lowered the temperature to around 3 Celsius and went to bed. When I went to move my stainless steel fermenter to my bottling setup, I noticed how cold it felt and saw ice crystals on the outside. I opened the lid of the fermenter to peek inside and saw that the contents had turned into a yellowish slushy instead of a bright, clear beer. It turned out that the sensor of my temperature regulator was a bit too well insulated, and the temperature had dropped way too much. I waited for it to thaw a little and decided this was going to be an ice triple and bottled the beer and named it Grain Reaper Triple. Despite the chaos, burns, broken equipment, and a near-frozen apocalypse, the beer turned out surprisingly drinkable and stronger than expected, thanks to the accidental freeze distilling. It's proof that even when things go off the rails, there's always hope for a silver lining, or at least a drinkable beer. I ended up buying an electric grain mill, a new all-in-one brew-in-a-bag system, and a thermal well, making it the most expensive beer I'd ever brewed. So that, sir, is a brewing upgrade. You were asking what that is. That's number 16. Upgrade. That's a brewing upgrade. Boss says, thank you both for providing such an enjoyable show and a platform for brewers to share their tales of misadventure. You keep up the fantastic work and can't wait to hear the other disasters of the year. Thank you very much. The Netherlands. I love hearing from other places.
Yeah.
Isn't it great? This internet thing might catch on.
Yeah.
I got to rest. You talk for a couple minutes. That was a good one.
Well, I don't have any stories in front of me. But
is it time to open another beer?
Yeah, it is actually.
That's Scott Housel for the past 4 or 5 years. I can't remember. I'm sure he's kept track, but he's supplied us with disaster show beers. Mm-hmm. But he has chipped in so much in the production of the beers and the show this past year that he does. We don't have like a 6-pack of delicious, rare Solera homebrew beers to sip, but you have one of his beers.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
But
you don't have one, do you?
No,
you drank it.
No, no, I made my own. What you have is a blend.
Okay.
This is from the Grape Ale episode. Scott was delivered a white wine kit by accident, I guess, from a homebrew shop, and so he made a beer with it. He took the concentrated wort from the wine kit and combined it with a Pilsner malt and made a series of beers with it. And if you haven't listened to that episode, it's the previous one in the feed, you should do that because Scott is very talented and imaginative, and I thought he was just going to make like one beer. It turns out he made like 5. So what you have there... Oh, pardon me. I'm turning into Foster Brooks. What you have there?
You need to lay off the oysters and vodka.
What you have there is well, Dean. Okay, I'm going to stop that. So what you have there is a blend between one of the beers that he made with London ale yeast that turned out pretty tart, but like enjoyably tart, and then one that he made with this Philly sour yeast that is designed to make sour beers, and so that what you have there is a blend between the two. The Philly sour beer with the hybrid wort was that's one of the most sour things I've ever tasted. But I'm just curious to see what you think about that one.
I actually quite like it.
Oh.
It's very tart,
Mm-hmm.
but not undrinkably so. I think it was about 10 years ago that sours were they were everywhere.
Yeah.
And this reminds me of 10 years ago. Meaning there were kind of a lot of beers that kind of tasted like this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing I'm curious about is what kind of wine kit it was, because that would matter.
Oh, it's like a Chilean something. I can't remember.
Well, it's something that matters. Meaning, is it a Chardonnay, or is it a Pinot Gris, or is it
I don't know.
A Riesling? Who knows?
I don't remember.
But that
quit parading me.
But I just mean, I if I wanted to brew something like this, I don't know how to do it.
Yeah. Well, that'd be a good conversation with Scott, because
actually it would. I've got 2 wine kits that unfortunately have gotten old. In other words, they're new in that they've never been opened.
Mint in box.
Yes, new old stock, or old used stock.
That's
I don't
right.
know which it's called.
We've been watching the same videos.
Yeah, but I could we could do that. We could take one of those kits and we could just brew a beer with it.
Yeah.
I don't know the reason I haven't brewed with it is, one, because I'm just really lazy, but also I keep wanting to go ahead and make the wine, but the kits are like 4 or 5 years old, so I don't know if they've oxidized in the
yeah,
if they're already past it, and I don't want to waste the time and the money and the energy.
Right.
But I kind of feel like
if you blended it with a beer,
maybe, yeah, mix it up with some malt and.
Well, the one made with just the London ale yeast was nicely tart, and it was just such a surprise that the grape must brought so much tartness to the beer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not to interrupt you, but I.
Not today.
But I would buy. I like to make wine kits, but I make the 1 gallon ones where you wind up with like 4 bottles of wine at the end of it. That's my extent of, because we just don't drink a lot of wine. So
you're too drunk by 6 o'clock on beer.
Who have you been talking to?
I know people in Prairie Grove.
It's a tightly knit network. But no, I kept one of those little kits, those little 1 gallon kits, for quite a while. And when I opened it finally, and it was a white wine kit, and the must was like brown.
See, that's what I'm afraid of.
And I was like,
really oxidized.
Ew, that's not going to be good at all. But it was only a gallon. And those things, it's like just as easy to make Kool-Aid as to make those things. And so I went ahead and made it. And I served some to you. I let you taste it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was good.
I remember that now. Yeah, it was good. It was just fine.
So who knows?
Well, I need to go ahead and mix these up. I mean, I'm just being lazy. But it did give me an idea that, maybe we just do it as an experiment.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Try to repeat Scott's results. And we're back.
And we're back.
Brian and the baby.
We may we may or may not have taken a break. Okay. Richard from Charlottesville, Virginia, writes in, "It's funny how karma works." That's a bumper sticker.
Yeah.
Just days ago, I was listening to the latest episode of Basic Brewing when James gave the first call for disaster stories for the year. I smugly smiled to myself and thought, nothing this year, James.
No.
Well, unfortunately, that's not how this email ends. Richard says, days ago, I was wrapping up prep for an English bitter that I was planning to brew. I was moving some gear into the basement and thought to myself, hey, that keg of holiday ale is likely ready to go on tap. So I walked the keg up to my Kegerator, hooked up my lines, and opened the tap to nothing. The keg weighed more than an empty one, so there was indeed beer inside. I pulled the relief valve on the keg, and the CO2 rushed out. So there was both beer and pressure in the keg. I must have a clog in the dip tube. Boy, I hate it when that happens.
You see a proctologist for that.
I hooked the CO2 line back up and increased the pressure to hopefully jar loose whatever was in there. Still nothing. Frustrated. Boy, I
say the proctologist.
Frustrated, I took the keg into my basement work area for further evaluation. I now hooked up the CO2 to the outlet side of the keg to try to push the blockage back into the keg. As I turned on the CO2, I heard a satisfying burp. That must have done it. But before I knew it, the overpressurized keg pushed beer up into my CO2 lines as I turned off the gas. I quickly disconnected everything. Luckily, the beer did not get back as far as my regulator. So I hooked up everything normally again, using my picnic tap to dispense, increased the pressure on the keg, well up over the normal dispense pressure, and nothing. Nothing, that is, until I took off the picnic tap connections and beer sprayed out of the dispense poppet from the high pressure in the keg. So there you go. There's, again, number 3, with the spraying beer. With the spraying on the, hey, lady, broken.
Hey, lady.
Broken. I finally settled, oh, and that's obscure host reference, number 14. Broken. I finally settled on transferring.
Bingo.
Oh, you got a bingo?
Yep. I'm out of here. I like to leave on a high note.
Well, you already got your prize. I gave you the beer. Oh,
nice.
Cheers to that.
Okay.
Broken. I always get emails and tweets and stuff from people who say, "I'm in a bingo." So people are playing the bingo. All right.
B-I-N-G-O, and bingo was his name.
B-I-N-G-O. Richard says, broken, I finally settled on transferring the whole keg into a new clean keg. I cleaned and took apart the first keg and found a ton of hop material from my dry hop charge in the bottom of the keg. And when I took the dispense side poppet apart, there was a nest, I say a nest of dry hop material covering the spring and every part of the inside of the poppet. Apparently, my cold crash and careful transfer of beer into the keg was not as effective as I thought. I'm happy to report the beer is fantastic.
See, this always happens.
A take on Anchor's Christmas Ale. And all it cost me was a new CO2 line, a bit of cleanup of spilled beer, and about an hour of frustration. Just a reminder that any task for a home brewer can cause and can become a disaster no matter how simple it seems.
That's right.
Richard says, thank you, James, for the podcast and content for so many years. I'm a happy patron and huge fan. Wow. Thanks, Richard.
Yeah.
And you made Steve a bingo.
That's right.
Anybody that calls back, whenever I hear the word bingo, have a call back to the movie was it Middle Age Crazy with Anne Margaret and what was his name? The actor.
You're out moving me. I don't know this movie.
Google that while I'm telling you. With what's his name? Bruce Dern. Bruce Dern and Anne Margaret, Middle Age Crazy. Bingo. Okay. 5 bingos. Okay. This is somebody gets that reference. And again, that's number 14.
I don't get it.
Obscure host reference. This
maybe obscure host reference has to be because we're kind of co-hosts. So when one or the other doesn't get it, then it's a true.
You get
like
double. You get to mark off that square twice.
That's right.
Middle Age Crazy is a movie about Bruce Dern. I believe it's Bruce Dern, who is married to Anne Margaret back in the 80s, and he's goes crazy and cheats on Anne Margaret with a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader or something. That is not going to happen. I'm sorry.
No.
All right.
No.
Okay, this is Matt.
I
went somewhere. I went somewhere for a moment. Chris, if you haven't seen Kristen Wiig throw a piece of paper away, what is it? The SNL sketch with her dancing like Anne Margaret and throwing the piece of paper away, or answering the door or whatever. Oh my God, that is just
one of the best skits ever.
It's the best of everything. All right.
Yep.
It's going to be the longest show.
Google that. If you don't know it, Google that. Yeah, it's worth it.
It's going to be the longest show ever. Okay.
Yeah.
Matt from
we're into January now, by the way.
Exactly. Matt from Akron, Ohio. Hello, James and Steve. After purchasing a home late last year, I could find... That sounded a little bit like the Monster Mash. Yeah. After purchasing a home late last year... Sorry. All right. Straighten up. All right. After purchasing a home late last year, I could finally fulfill my dream of building my own home brewery. To get ready, I sought out as much information on the topic as I possibly could, and it eventually led me to your podcast. Wow.
Ring the bell now. There you go. Okay.
That we're going to give bad advice?
No, it's foreshadowing.
Yeah, no. After listening to hundreds of episodes, I began brewing. Wow. My favorite episodes, like many others, I assume, are the disaster episodes. About 6 brews in, I was amazed by how easy things were.
There you go.
I had no issues with fermentations, no big messes, no wort squirts. That needs to be a square.
That's kind of wort squirt. That's just going in. That's just going in.
Wort squirt.
Wort squirt.
No big messes, no wort squirts, bad burns, etc. Famous last words. One day this summer, on a Friday evening after work, I decided to take on my most ambitious brew yet, a gigantic, heavily hopped, 8.5% hazy IPA. That sounds delicious. The recipe was for a 5-gallon batch. I brew in a bag on an 8-gallon kettle, and my grain bill was 12 pounds, including 4 pounds total of flaked wheat and oats. Just from my experience. I was trying to clone my favorite beer from a local brewery, so I had my blinders on before realizing that this was a terrible idea. I mashed in with full water and grain volume. Mistake number 1. I tried to mash with the lid on to hold the temperature steady, and when I put the lid on, it pushed the meniscus of the wort and grain running down the sides of the kettle. This is someone with a chemistry background.
Yeah.
The meniscus. Covering my propane burner and garage floor. Don't worry, open doors and lots of ventilation. So, my warning about brewing inside with propane. Okay, no big deal. When it was time to remove the grains, I did my usual routine of getting on the stepladder and grabbing the bag with my grill mitts. Wow, this is heavy. I thought the bag may be stuck on the temperature probe on the kettle, so I lowered it back into the kettle to reset. I did it again, being mindful of the probe. Well, you always have to be mindful of the probe. And it was still unbelievably heavy. I then realized the mash was so thick that it was not draining out of the bag. As quickly as I could, I evacuated the grain bag to a 5-gallon...
Oh, Lord. I'm just an 8-year-old boy that understands 3-syllable words.
Yeah. Whenever I see a disaster story about people being evacuated and impacted, which is worse?
I don't know.
If you're impacted, you need to be evacuated. Sorry.
I can't take it. Oh.
I evacuated the grain bag to a 5-gallon bucket with a colander to attempt to salvage some of that wort.
Well, yeah.
At this point, my pre-boil volume in the kettle is supposed to be 6 gallons. There are barely 3 gallons in the kettle. I squeeze and squeeze and squeeze.
Well, yeah, of course.
Now it's a children's... well, not... I squeeze and squeeze and squeeze as much as I can, and hardly any wort comes out, considering how heavy the bag is. Oh, well. Relax, don't worry, you have a homebrew. We'll ride with the 5 gallons I was able to start the boil with. Matt says, being a rookie still, the whole relax, don't worry, have a homebrew thing was not sitting well with me, so I started to panic about gravity readings. While the kettle is at a raging boil and I have my hose connected to the valve to rack the fermenter, I decide to fill up a graduated cylinder to cool down a gravity reading. Looking back a few months later, I still can't believe I thought this was a good idea. So, nearly burning my hands, I opened the very hot valve and held the hose a couple of feet away. The inevitable happened and the cylinder filled very rapidly with the boiling hot sugar water soaking my sock. Ooh. Matt says, wore sandals for the first time while brewing, breaking my own personal rule of closed-toed shoes. Ouch. Don't panic. I shut the valve, set the cylinder aside, and began chilling. While I was chilling, I peeled off the sock to see the skin on the top of my foot totally melted off. Less than 5 minutes after it happened. I finished the brew day very carefully, got everything cleaned up, racked the beer to the fermenter, and then assessed the damage to my foot again. By the end of the night, it was an atomic shade of red. Thankfully, a trip to the hospital was avoided, and the scar remains today. The day after the brew, the smell of the Australian hops coming out of the spunding valve. Oh, dang.
Spunding.
We need a sound for a spunding valve.
Yep.
The hops, well, when do you have a spunding valve? When you're brewing?
Under pressure.
There you go. Made it all worth it. The gravity issues and the volume issues, along with a heavily attenuated beer, left us with a 9.2% Imperial Hazy IPA that tasted just as I intended. 10 out of 10. Would brew again.
Wow.
Preferably without the horrific burn. Woo.
But see, here's the thing. You can't brew that again.
No, that's right.
Unless you endure the burn.
You need the scent of scorched flesh to be in the air.
It will never be the same.
Yeah. So I have those name brand of gloves. Are you familiar with those? They're gloves and they're made out of like woven. What's the stuff the helmets are made out of? Kevlar, woven Kevlar.
Kevlar, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they say do not use the of gloves if your hands are even damp. Because,
okay.
The water will turn to steam instantly. Well, I was mucking around. I was boiling pasta, and I was about to take the pasta pot over to the sink to dump it out, and I accidentally dipped my middle finger in the boiling water, which soaked immediately into the of glove, and I could not get the glove off fast enough. Because, it just pressed and so I had this, it looked like I was wearing a ring. The blister on the, it does not take very long for boiling water to cause injury.
No.
Yes. Okay. All right, so Danny. Oh, well, this is kind of sad, but it may give you a little time to talk at the end of this. Is Danny from Port Leyden, Leyden or Leiden, Leyden.
I'd say Leiden.
Port Leyden, New York. I've been a long-time listener to your show, and of course I love it. Well, thanks, Danny. I'm not sure if this counts as a disaster, but every batch of beer I tried brewing for the last 7 or so batches have turned out weak in flavor at best, or maybe like some sort of undrinkable science experiment. I'm not sure how to fix my issue, as every brew seems to have a different problem. Hopefully my next brew will at least turn out drinkable. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, Danny. So what? You're a former homebrew shop owner. What do you tell people when they come in and just like say, did you ever have anybody who's like, nothing works, everything's bad?
Yeah, I just send them down to the cookie making store because I figure
they're done.
I don't know. I mean, without any details. I mean, I don't know. And I don't know what his reference of not drinkable is.
Yeah.
Because if you open up a fresh Budweiser, I'm not drinking that. So,
Well, that's where, on a serious note, getting connected to a local homebrew store or
absolutely
a local homebrew club is where what I would advise.
That's actually really good advice because if you're new to the game, to the sport of homebrewing, and you don't have a community around you, and you're just not quite sure you're brewing, I mean, there's how many thousands of styles of beer, and so you're brewing beers that you've never tasted, you don't know what they're really supposed to taste like, and there's techniques you've never done. Well, if you don't have anybody around you that can kind of help you think through it, or just be that second pair of eyes or taste buds, then it's hard.
Yeah.
It's real hard.
Yeah. And often at the shop, people would come down and say, here, what's wrong with this beer? And we'd taste the beer and it's like, it's good.
It's good. There's nothing wrong with it. We call that flavor.
Yeah, this is fine. It doesn't taste like a Budweiser, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, or frequently, actually, the most common thing was that the beer was just green.
Yeah, yeah.
Usually, and actually, just it's fine. Just let it go for another 2 or 3 weeks in the bottle, and it'll be fine. Yeah. And actually, I remember that when I first started brewing, I took a bottle into Andy, and who was the guy that had the store with Andy?
Oh God!
That long ago, and I apologize to people that have no idea what we're talking about. But about 20 years ago, the local homebrew shop was owned by Andy Sparks and another guy. Who I don't remember.
Your big braggot has knocked his name out of my. Plus,
exactly.
30 years or 20 years or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But my point is just I took the beer in. I'm like, and it was maybe my second batch, or third batch ever. And I said, "What's wrong with the beer?" And the guys just laughed at me. They said, "Nothing wrong with the beer. It's green."
Yeah, just let it sit.
So let it go. Don't ever give up on a beer unless it's scorched.
We keep coming back to the lighter fluid.
Referring back to the, but that's actually true.
So
if it's not truly infected to where it's like, holy crap, there's amoebas in there that I don't even want to talk about.
Yeah,
unless it's like that.
And we've had some of those too.
The beer, sure. Everybody, if you've been brewing beer, you're going to make a mistake. You're going to brew some bad beer. That's going to happen. But don't give up on your beer.
No, and just find an experienced brewer, go to a club meeting or go to the local homebrew shop and talk about your experience and because it's really hard to diagnose stuff over email. Yeah. And especially if we can't taste it, and don't send us your bad beer. Right. Please.
Well, I was going to say that's the thing about being a homebrew store owner is that a lot of guys will come in with their bad beer.
Yeah. This is awful. This is awful. Taste it. What's wrong with it?
Yeah.
But you did get some delicious beers.
Oh, absolutely. I really did.
And I tasted like some really good I guess, illegal whiskey.
A little Arkansas moonshine.
Yeah, that was barrel aged and quite delicious.
I've had some. There's some local shine makers around here, around Northwest Arkansas, that know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're with the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, I know nothing.
You can't recognize people by their face or their name because they all paid in cash.
That's right.
It's an empty well. Don't even try.
Well,
okay, we got four more letters.
Go.
Jeez. All right. This is I'm going to say Helmer from Iersel in the Netherlands. And this is
we're very big in the Netherlands.
We're Scandinavian. Right? I'm cool with that. I've got like 2% Viking blood apparently.
Wow.
Yeah, according to where I spit in the cup. Okay.
Your dentist?
No. Yeah, my dentist also does ancestry, genealogy stuff. My dentist is actually related distantly to my wife.
Well,
which, you know, in this town, it
is Prairie Grove.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah. Got a family tree. It's just got a trunk.
Family tree's got no branches. I'm bringing in fresh genetics. Okay, no, please don't tell Susan. Okay. Okay, Helmer from Iersel, the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. Hi, James and Steve. Thanks for the podcast. I listen almost weekly in the car when commuting to and from work, and I've been a listener for a couple of years now. Well, welcome. Fairly new arrival. I particularly enjoy the Masher Lock recipe development and, of course, the disaster shows. Well, excellent. This year, I thought I'd write in. You might get your bingo card ready for my personal story. Might tick off a box or two. You want to get a new bingo card? Refresh your bingo cards, everybody. Here comes Helmer. I've been homebrewing for a couple of years. Started out in the kitchen with a stovetop soup pan back in 2015, and now I'm on a fancy and not so cheap brew tools system, being able to brew potentially 80 liters. Wow. But with two young children running around and trying to quote-unquote help every step of the way, it's a bit of a challenge to find the time and have a relaxed brew day. My work-from-home office is a room downstairs and doubles as the brewery. I'm a web...
Did he say work, W-O-R-K, or wort, W-O-R-T?
Well, both. My work-from-home office is a room downstairs that doubles as so it's both work from home and work from home, I guess.
Okay, there you go.
I'm a web developer by profession with a nerdy hobby for flight simulation. Ooh. You know, that seems cool to me. Have you seen these things where you can like fly a 747?
Oh, yeah.
Like across Europe, and it all happens in real time. Mm-hmm. And that seems cool to me. Anyway, so I have a quite expensive PC, laptops, and flight simming stuff such as joysticks and aircraft panels hanging around in this office/brewery. Wow. It should not be a I'm having trouble finding when you read and you can't find where the next line starts. Okay. It should not be a mess there this year. It should not be a mess there. So this year I finally put up some shelves on the wall to store most brewing equipment. The whole room looks nice and tidy. Even my 1-liter and 3-liter Erlenmeyer flasks for making starters fit on said wall shelves so the kids can't get their hands on them or break them. Well, that's very good. Helmer is a conscientious parent. Fast forward to the day I came to an agreement with my girlfriend that I'd get up quite early, brew a Belgian wit beer, and then do something fun with the family. Waking up early is no problem. I've already mentioned the young kids, and my 4-year-old daughter was up around 6 a.m. as well and ready to, quote-unquote, help. She got into the office/brewery with me, and I needed to take some stuff from the aforementioned top shelf. Oh.
Yep.
With one eye on my daughter near the kettle and one eye on the 3-liter flask that shouldn't fall from the shelf, I managed to brush the 1-liter flask with the sleeve of my shirt and remember it dropping in slow motion with me yelling, "Nay!" N-E-E-E-E-E-E. Pronounced in English like nay. Oh, I got it right. Dutch for no. And bursting into about 1 million pieces when it hit the floor. Okay, broken glass. Where's broken glass?
We have broken glass? Oh, number 4.
Number 4 is broken glass. Okay.
Oh, I didn't put it in my... it wasn't one of my categories.
Well, there you go. But number 4, broken glass. If you've waited this long, there you go. Okay. Glass shards everywhere. Ugh. Quickly getting my daughter out of the room and me cursing, luckily muffled by the humming of the vacuum cleaner, wasn't the best way to start off a brew day. You might think dropping a 1-liter Erlenmeyer flask wouldn't be too much of a problem, but it took me about an hour and a half to get all the glass pieces cleaned up. No, broken glass is the worst.
That's terrible.
Because you can get you can get the vacuum out, you can get the broom out. 2 days later, you see you see the light glinting off a piece of glass that's under a nook or cranny or whatever.
And it's just the worst because of glass. I mean, you can okay, I spilled a beer. You mop it up. You do the best you can. Who cares? You spill glass, break glass, and you better get that stuff up because your dog's gonna walk over it.
That's right.
And worse, your wife
or your significant other. Yes. Yeah. Not the best way to start off the brew day, but what can you do? Just go on and try to make beer. Well, already running behind schedule. Brew day went okay, and after a few hours, it was time for the most boring part, cleaning. Now, with a system like mine, you could easily clean in place with stuff like PBW. I don't know what brands you can mention. Should this be in your podcast? But a shout out to the Belgian product Enzybrew. That's what I actually use, and it's fantastic stuff. So, Enzybrew. Enzybrew. You need to sponsor the podcast, Enzybrew. You've heard we got people over there where you're selling the stuff. Okay. It uses enzymes to clean, and it's really the best I've used in all these years. Please try it. Please try it. Helmer works for Enzybrew. He does their website, I'm pretty sure. Please try it out should you be able to get your hands on it over there in the USA. But before pumping that cleaning solution through all pipes and hoses, I always use the garden hose to spray off most stains and residue. Just to say, my garden hose is one of those easy-to-store hoses that are made to shrink and push out all the water whenever the water supply is turned off, so it's easy under pressure. Anyway, I hook up the garden hose to the tap outside, put the nozzle/spraying pistol on the other side of the hose. I put it on jet stream setting, which has quite a hard beam of water, and spray off the stubborn residue on the insides of my kettle. Now I need to get something from another room. This should be another thing, distracted brewer. Now I need to get something. Now I need to get something from another room. So I turn off the nozzle and let the hose hang loose in the kettle. Have you ever seen snakes dancing to the snake charmer's flute? Well, that's what I'm seeing right now. A hose with a very powerful beam dancing from left to right and spraying water all over everything. And I do mean everything. The kettle, my computer, laptop, flight sim stuff, the walls, the shelves, and the floor. And not just a drizzle. No, I mean full jet blast. Man, you should have heard the sound of the hose going off. A loud pshh.
Oh, yeah.
Everywhere. I ran outside to turn off the tap, but it's too late. It's now pool day all around the office/brewery. Using every towel in the house, I try to clean up the mess. Needless to say, the do something fun with the family started a little late in the day. Luckily, all the hardware in the office seemed to work fine after having it dry for a couple of days. It turned out a piece of the nozzle broke off, so it couldn't ever be turned off again. My girlfriend wasn't too happy about it, but made not too much of a fuss about it either. She even threw me some towels to help clean up the mess. Okay, so that would that be helpful, spouse? Like being
yes.
Well, it's
yeah.
both 1 and 19, because 1 is angry spouse, number 19 is angry spouse. She's both.
She's pissed off, but I'm still going to help you.
That's right. And I got permission to brew again a few weeks later, although a few stern warnings were issued the day before. Of course, the wit beer was a success and didn't last long in the keg this summer. Should I make it again next year, I'd probably have a go at brewing outside again. Meanwhile, I've opened one of your West Fork IPAs.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I expected more out of you from that.
I got nothing to say.
It's good. It's a good beer. That's all you want to say about it?
Well, I mean, the West Fork IPA is just inspired by it's an English style IPA that happens to be my son's favorite beer of mine, of my recipes.
Yes.
And I brewed it because he will be home at Christmas, and I wanted to have that beer for him. It's a lovely beer. I'm glad that you like it.
Yeah.
I like it. And it's real easy to brew. It's just 10 pounds of maris otter, a pound of brown malt, a pound of Victory, and a pound of wheat. And, just I used, I think in this one I used Windsor. But traditionally, or in the kit when I sold it, it was Nottingham, I think. And then just some English yeast, up to about 50 or 60 IBUs, something like that. And you've got a nice little, nice malty pale IPA.
It's delicious.
Thanks.
And we heard recently, I copied you on a reply. We heard recently from someone who found that recipe online and brewed it. And
good. And did they like it?
I'm assuming.
Oh, we don't know. We don't know yet.
No,
okay.
They were just looking for the recipe because I think you mentioned it on the show or the video or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I really ought to take somewhere I've got all those recipe sheets archived. I should get them all into a place and make them available on the Basic Brewing website. Just
or
Patreon.com.
patreon.com.
I forget. Monetize.
Or Mai Tais. Either way.
Yeah, or Mai Tais. I'll take a Mai Tai or $1. I don't care which.
I'd buy that for $1.
I'd buy that for $1.
Okay, Jason from London, Ontario, Canada. Hi, James. Longtime listener and fan of the show. Thank you, Jason. I've been pretty lucky in my 10-plus years of brewing because this is my first real disaster and is still fairly minor, relatively speaking. It actually involved 2 spills happening almost at the same time. First, I started heating my strike water back on the back deck. Then I went downstairs to begin gravity transferring a beer from my SS brew bucket into a keg because I wanted to pitch the new beer onto that same yeast keg. Done that recently. A normal day so far. Back on my deck when the water was up to temperature, I lifted the pot and poured the water into my igloo cooler, MLT, mash louder ton, I'm assuming. But I forgot to close the valve. I wish I had a nickel. You start to fill the kettle and you're like, my feet are wet. What's going on? But I forgot to close the valve and lost a couple liters of hot water before realizing it. No big deal. Just a hit to my pride for making such a rookie mistake. I just rolled with it, mashed in, and then later added some extra sparge water to compensate. Then I went to check on my transfer. When I got to the bottom of my stairs, there was a really strong aroma of beer. So if you decided to use the new smell of beer, number 21, really strong aroma of beer. It didn't click on my mind at first, but then I noticed the river of beer on my floor. I obviously made another blunder, but what was it? Then I remember, spilled beer also, but we had that like 5 times. Then I remembered that the volume in the fermenter was higher than expected and saw that the extra few liters of beer had poured out of the keg's pressure relief valve. Luckily, it was just in an unfinished area on a concrete floor, and the cleanup wasn't terrible. But I must have missed some because the fruit flies had a resurgence for the next couple of weeks. All the best and happy holidays, Jason from London, Ontario, Canada.
Well, okay. Who hasn't?
Fruit flies. Where do they come from? When we get, we could get, some apples from the store or whatever, and then all of a sudden we get fruit flies. Where do those come from? Those, are they eggs on the fruit? I don't know.
I guess, or Miami.
Or well, I bet in Florida they do have a lot of fruit flies. Okay, 2 more stories.
Okay,
hang in there, Steve.
I'm here. I'm here.
This is Tom from Harvard, Illinois. Attaches to my beer disaster that happened this year. I'm not a great writer, but the story is pretty straightforward. I beg to differ. I think this is a good story. Again, this is Tom from Harvard. Tom's from Harvard. I would just say that. Okay. So Tom says, I started homebrewing in 1981, slowly gathered equipment, and jumped into all-grain brewing. Like a lot of people that started homebrewing, after about 7 years, I was now juggling family and career and facing yet another cross-country move. I made the decision to give it up, and I got rid of all my equipment except for 1 glass carboy for 5-gallon batches. Fast forward to 2021, and after moving out of our house into an apartment above our retail store, my wife was sensing that I needed something to fill my downtime and suggested that I started brewing again. So there's helpful spouse. That's number 19.
Oh, yeah.
At first I said no, as I did not want to deal with all the equipment. However, she persisted, so I went into the internet to see what's new in brewing. I learned about brew in a bag and electric brew pots and was very intrigued. Then I found basic brewing audio and video and started going through the archives. Wow. What really convinced me was the small batches. See, Tom is just singing all of our songs here.
Mm-hmm.
Brewing batches that were 2 or 3 gallons was perfect for me, so I was off and brewing again. My wife was very supportive, and she even helped me bottle my small batches, but I think that got old for her, as one day she brought her tablet, and she had found a Kegerator close by for sale on Facebook Marketplace. She said that she already had come to a price with the seller, and we were going to go pick it up that night.
I love this woman. I don't even know her at all, and I would marry her.
Where are we going to put it? I asked, and she had all planned out where we would put it in the mechanical room with the hot water heater. So we got it, and I bought some corny kegs and picnic taps to start out with and started kegging. It was so much easier, and my wife didn't have to help with the bottling. See, this is all about her not having to help with the bottling. That's what. However, that glass carboy was sitting in a corner catching my eye, and now that I was kegging, brewing a 5-gallon batch was more attractive to me. See, that's how they get you. Mm-hmm. After watching an archived basic brewing video where James brewed a clone batch of Two Hearted Ale,
yeah, it's good beer.
I had my mind made up that I was going to do the 5-gallon Two Hearted Ale in my glass carboy. Brew day came and everything was great, no problems, and fermentation was fine. I went ahead and kegged it, attached the gas line in the picnic tap, turned the gas up to 30 to force carbonate, closed the kegerator, and was looking forward to drinking this batch. My wife went out of town, and 2 days later, I was in our showroom talking to an employee. Remember, they live up, this is like Bob's Burgers. They live upstairs from their retail space. I was in her showroom talking to an employee when a drop of liquid fell between us to the floor.
Oh.
In our showroom, we have a suspended ceiling with ceiling tiles. I looked up, and 2 tiles were wet and slightly bowing.
Oh, no.
Oh, crap. Did I forget to turn off the water? I ran upstairs into the apartment, and everything was fine, so I ran out to check the freezer to make sure it didn't get unplugged and defrosted. As I passed the mechanical room, it hit me. The smell of beer. Number 21. I flew open the door to the kegerator and grabbed the keg. It was empty. Seems when I put the picnic tap on, I didn't set it all the way, and when I closed the door, the line was in the way, and the door did not close all the way. So the beer was being forced up the dip tube and out the outpost. It leaked down the keg and out the front of the kegerator. Now, being that this was the mechanical room, it just had a plywood floor with cracks where the plywood came together, and the front of the kegerator was directly over one of these cracks, and 5 gallons of beer had dripped through the ceiling tiles below.
Oh, Lord.
I ran downstairs, and 2 of my employees were on the floor trying to clean it up as it was a pretty steady drip at this point. I asked them if they'd ever seen a grown man cry, then grabbed the ladder in the back and brought it out to the showroom. Climbed the ladder, and I was going to try to take out that tile that wasn't as wet as the other one. I must have bumped the frame as I got up there, and both tiles just absolutely exploded, sending wet tile and beer all over my employees and into the showroom. Oh, did I tell you that one employee was the 18-year-old daughter of the mayor?
No, that's good.
So after we got them and the floor cleaned up, I had to send an email to the mayor to make sure he didn't think that we had an illegal bar in the basement, or I wasn't giving his daughter beers all day. Next door, we have a hardware store, so I grabbed one of the carpet cleaners and shampooed the area, but no matter how many candles we lit, it still smelled of beer for several days. The worst part of it all is that I didn't get one beer from this batch. Remember, it's a two-hearted clone.
Yeah.
However, I recently brewed this beer again and have learned not to put the picnic tap on until I turned the gas down and it was ready to drink. Wow. That's quite the story from Tom in Harvard, Illinois. I'd say that was very well written.
Oh, I would too.
Okay.
Harvard.
I'm going to have it, yeah. All right, I'm going to take another sip of your IPA before I read this last story.
I need a beer too, and I don't have one.
Oh, what do you got?
Hey, what's this? I get this thing that says pills on top.
Oh, that's my little Pilsner. You've had that on the show.
Tell me about it again.
Okay.
While I pour.
Okay, Foster. That's my little. It's just 10 pounds of Pilsner. This is the one I made that as a starter for the big dark beer.
Oh, this is a starter Pilsner.
Starter Pilsner.
Yeah.
It's the show that I posted today to the public.
Well, it's a lovely beer.
It's 4.5%. It's or 4.4%. To start at 1044, finished at 1010. Imperial L17 Harvest. Just a little bit.
That's perfect.
Yeah, you said it was scratching your itch on the show. And
it is. It's so good.
And you said on the show that that's the beer you would want to marry.
Mm-hmm.
And people laughed about that. They thought it was funny.
It's the Mary Ann of beers.
That's right. It's not the ginger of beers.
No, it's not a ginger beer.
So to speak. Okay, Andrew from Sunshine Coast, Queensland, Australia. And trigger warning, have we ever... I'm turning to Foster Brooks. Have we ever done a trigger warning on the show?
No. Well, there was that Roy Rogers and Dale Evans episode.
Another obscure reference.
You've forgotten. You've forgotten about that.
Another obscure reference. Trigger was the horse. Okay. Yeah, so if you're easily offended by... well, there are some things that happen here that haven't happened in other... I don't know. The appearance of two things, I think, is for the first time. in the history of the Disaster Show. Okay.
Okay.
And I wrote to Andrew. I said, this story may make Steve gag, so we'll see. Okay. So to finish out, for those leaving, thanks for listening and thanks for supporting. We'll talk to you next time. Okay, now from Andrew, Sunshine Coast, Queensland, Australia. Hi, James and Steve. Regrettably, I have a tale of woe to share which may contribute to your annual disaster show. That's a guarantee. I'm not generally superstitious, but sometimes it does seem that catastrophes come in 3. Well, maybe this is more like 2.5 disasters, but anyway, I let them happen one after the other. During mid-November 2023, my wife took our toddlers back to her native England for a long Christmas break. I remained in Australia to work until the week before Christmas. And remember, Christmas is in the summertime down there.
Yeah.
Needless to say, before I left to join my family, I made sure I had my 2 kegs and my Kegerator full of beer to cold condition my absence with another batch of Helles fermenting away in the other fridge. While I was having a couple of coldies on my last afternoon in Australia, I figured I would pull all the kegs out of the Kegerator and clean it. As I live in Queensland, it's warm in December, so I thought I'd turn off the fridge to try and save the compressor while the door would be open for a few minutes for cleaning. 3 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I arrived home a day late with my wife and children after we missed a flight when our daughter threw up all over the airport and wasn't allowed on the flight. So that's,
wow.
I think that's the first
epic.
That's the first appearance of vomit on the show, I think. Then my dad, who lives nearby and picked us up from the airport, told me, and I wish I could do an accent, there's a bit of an issue in your garage. Turns out I did not turn the Kegerator back on after cleaning it, and the flies have infested the meat and fish in the freezer compartment, and the whole appliance is now much dirtier and definitely smellier than it was before I tried to clean it. So I spent the last hours of a Christmas holiday jet-lagged on my hands and knees trying to clean up the garage and get rid of the stench in the garage. Eventually, with a dogged campaign of physical and chemical warfare, the smell of rotting flesh began to subside, and we felt it was safe to start going into the garage again.
Oh, man.
The next comparatively minor issue was in the fermentation fridge next door, where the Helles I had been lagering over the break had taken on a distinctly Belgian twang. I blame the yeast I used for the Belgian ankle that held on somewhere in the Firmzilla, which I can use to ferment beers under pressure. So that's a second example of inattention and laziness in the brewery causing trouble. I still kegged it, though. It definitely wasn't bad enough to tip out. Strangely enough, then, one night, maybe a week after making that decision, my wife bursts into the kitchen. Why is there beer all over the garage floor? What the bleep is going on with your your brewing? Since I don't want the kids to mess around with the beer taps, and maybe also because I'm too lazy, I have not drilled holes in the fridge to mount the taps on the door. My beer taps just sit loosely inside the fridge. Well, that's what I got going on. On this occasion, I've poured a glass, put the tap down carelessly on the so the tap got stuck open. Half an hour later, the Belgian-y Helles that I didn't really like was all over the garage floor, and my gas was gone. Mold, and he spells mold like Bob Mold of Husker Du. Mold doesn't need an invitation into people's houses. Bob Mold doesn't need an invitation into people's houses. It just comes right in. Just like walking around with your head in the clouds. Make no sense at all. Okay. Mold doesn't need an invitation to people's houses over the warm and humid summers in our area. I cleaned the beer up as well as I could, but it was not enough. A few days later, the smell of mold began to overshadow the fading but persistent smell of rotten flesh in the garage. So there I was in the garage again, moving fridges around, on my hands and knees, scrubbing away. Thankfully, the mold stopped coming back after the third scrub with PBW.
Do you realize how simple and less expensive our lives would be if we didn't brew beer? Just as a community.
But then, all the happiness.
What else would you do?
So one more paragraph from Andrew down in Sunshine Coast, Queensland, Australia. After all this blew over, I decided I just needed to stop having all these accidents in the garage. My wife was gracious enough to forgive all these mishaps soon enough that I never ran out of homebrew, which is always a bonus too. Thanks to James and friends for helping me through the drive to work with a wonderful podcast each week. I wish all you and all the other listeners a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year of predictable and maggot and mold-free brewing.
That's always my goal.
That's the first
maggot-free brewing.
That's the first time vomit and maggot have made their ways into the show, I think.
Well, they were bigger than Brewer and Shipley in the 70s.
maggot and mold.
Vomit.
Maggot and vomit and mold.
Maggot and vomit, yeah.
Maggot and vomit and mold.
They were the Brewer and Shipley of Albania.
Albania, you border on the Adriatic.
Your land is mostly mountainous, and your chief export is chrome.
Name that show. That was from Cheers. That was Coach from Cheers. Okay.
I can't. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks.
We have one more?
I'm done.
Is that it?
No, this is me with my little outro. Well, thanks, Steve. Is it the longest show? It's over 2 hours. Is that the longest?
It's a long one.
God, I didn't think. See, because we had fewer stories this year than in years past. But we did chat a bit, which is nice. We did chat. This has been fun.
You drink 2 or 3 10% beers.
I still have your, what is this, mead?
Oh, yeah. I want you to try that.
Not right now, but what is it?
It's cherry, chocolate, black raspberry, New Mexico chili, and habanero chili mead.
Cleaning out the pantry mead.
Well, kind of. So a friend of mine who lives in Santa Fe, a woman gave her a 4-pound, jar of wild New Mexico honey. So that's what I made with it.
Wow.
And I used yeast, but I don't remember what kind.
That's good.
I don't remember what kind of yeast. Well, it's written down and we'll publish it. So.
Yeah, we'll eventually do a show on it, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's actually really good. Actually, tastes really good.
I'm sure. I can't wait.
Yeah.
I think I've got to go make some beans now. I think I better be drinking mead while I'm making beans.
There you go.
Who knows what I'm going to put into the bean? Maybe a clean in the pantry bean batch.
That sounds great.
Well, Steve, we're coming into 2025. And July is going to be our 20th.
A year of portent.
Our 20th anniversary of doing this show, and we've talked for quite some time. My goal has been to make it to 20 years. So we'll be going into July. Now, what happens after July? I don't know. But God, I love doing the show. I love obviously I love doing the show with you, but like Matt Giovanisi and Jason Secor and Adam Ross and Scott Housel and Sean Terrell and everybody else who has
Zot.
We haven't heard. We need to talk to Zot again. We haven't had to talk and Tim Lieber.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have started naming people because then I'm going to forget somebody.
Yeah.
But thanks to all these people who have come in recently, it's kind of infused new life into the show. And so I don't know that I still would have been going had it not been for
good point.
for them, because God, it's just number one, it's kind of we're in a shrinkage time in the craft beer industry, and so it's more difficult to find stories to talk about. But Chris Colby, did I mention Chris Colby? God,
No.
see, that's the thing is you start. He's like, he should be near the top of the list. But the thing about me making a list of things after I've had 3 beers, what have I had? Anyway, we're coming up with new content, and we're brewing new beers, and we're this Smash Your Luck thing. We're inventing new styles essentially, and it has it has breathed new life into the show that would not, this show would have stopped, I think, had it not been for the new folks coming in and really, I'm really, I tell them every time we get together, but I'm extremely grateful. Because this will be show number 921.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Wow.
It's
nuts. Insane.
Yeah, it's nuts. And many thanks to, Imperial Yeast is our sole sponsor of the show now. And they're awesome. They're so great. And Desiree and Dave of High Gravity were with us for so long, and Ricky and Kelly from Groenfell, and all the folks that and the Brewers the Brewers Association and the Home Brewers Association were with us for so long, and of course we can't forget our listeners and listener supporters, without which there would be no reason to do the show. This is where I get to the I love you guys part of the show. But we're going to keep chugging along. My goal is to reach July of just because I want to cross that 20-year finish line. And so I can't promise that we won't take a week off here and there in 2025, because Susan and I wanted to start taking we're not getting any younger, and we want to start taking some trips, around the country, and maybe, out of the country, just to, because now's the time to do it. So, anyway,
I got a bad hip. So, take me out of the running.
Well, you're going to go places. You've been places recently. So, anyway, I don't know how much of that makes sense. I'll listen back to it and edit it and see if it makes sense. But the big lot of it is that I'm very, very grateful to you, Steve, and to Chris Colby. I mentioned him first, and everybody that's been with us for so long. And we'll keep chugging along. Can't make any promises at this point, but the goal is to make it to July, just because we've got to get across that 20-year finish line. It's just too close.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Steve.
Incredible.
This is I'm going to shut up because we're at like 2 hours and 15 minutes. This is ridiculous. But Steve have a happy rest of the holiday season, and your birthday's coming up. We're going to be celebrating that with you.
Yeah.
And happy and prosperous 2025.
Same to you, to Susan, to all our friends and family, and happy holidays. And I hope the next year is great.
God bless us, everyone.
God bless us, everyone.
And Tiny Tim did not die.
No, he didn't.